Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are here for a SmackDown recap that took place on April 11, 2025 in Seattle, Washington. The penultimate SmackDown before WrestleMania. So without further ado, let's get started. Nick Aldis kicks off the show in the ring and invites Randy Orton down to join him. You can tell he's irked by the RKA we took last week. And Randy, of course, isn't too fazed by his actions. Viper doing Viper things. And he apologizes and basically says, but I did pay double for such a occurrence. And he then says he's just upset about not having an opponent and or match at Mania. And then goes on to say, if it happens again, I'll be sure to apologize to Mickie James. And maybe I'm one of the few, but I did not know they were married. I had to look that up. I was confused as to why he brought up Mickie James. So, yeah, so learned something new there for me personally. Then Solo and Tama Tonga make their way to the ring, get into some fighting with Randy Orton, and LA Knight's name was mentioned beforehand, and say his name and he appears. He then becomes part of the scuffle as well, and Randy Orton and LA Knight stand tall to finish the segment, and this eventually leads to the main event, which has those four going up against each other later on. So, in terms of action, the first match we see is a gauntlet match to determine the number one contenders for Liv and Raquel's tag team championships. This starts out with Bayley and Lyra, and they are shortly joined by the Sonya Deville-less Pure Fusion Collective. In my opinion, this was basically a pretty straightforward contest. Lyra and Bayley made pretty light work out of Pure Fusion Collective. Natalya and Maxine Dupree, Caden Carter and Katana Chance, and B-Fab and Michin, which I think is fair because, you know, that team, even if they are makeshift, obviously are a little higher up the echelon than those other teams mentioned. But the real work started when Alba Fire and Piper Niven came to the ring. And then it became a very hard-hitting contest. Obviously, by that point, Bayley and Lyra are quite tired. And this one was very hard-hitting, and no one was made to look weak in this part, especially Piper, who took that elbow drop from Bayley and kicked out before a 2 count. So I think Piper is going to be doing big things in the very near future, and I couldn't be happier. She deserves it, and she had a bit of a rough start on Maine. Well, I say that she had a good start, and then she kind of went through a lull period. And I feel like they're realizing that she's a top talent. And I think she should be treated as such. So looking forward to that. But back to the main objective here. A bit confusing, but Bayley and Lyra, the Women's Intercontinental Champion, are going to challenge Liv and Raquel at Mania. So definitely some head scratching here going on, but I think the main takeaway here is Bayley and Lyra especially have all of a sudden been booked really strong. And I think that's great for Lyra in particular, and I think it's great for the Intercontinental title. It's just a shame that she's not going to be defending it at Mania. But you know, we both mentioned that in prior weeks, so I'm not going to harp on that. But I think overall, I am a pretty big fan of gauntlet matches. So this was nice to see. This was nice to see the last two teams involved in the match. It was nice to see them get a good push and made to look really strong. But yeah, long overdue, well deserved for Lyra and Kylie, Alba Fire and Piper Niven looked really good here as well. Then we go on to a Damian Priest and McIntyre segment. This is kind of just more of the same, what they've been doing. They talk about their Sin City Street Fight, which is the Mania match stipulation. And don't really have a ton else to say about this. It's kind of just more of the same for me. Drew stands tall at the end. And my opinion kind of on that whole thing is if Drew doesn't win, we riot. It's pretty simple. So then we go on to a match between Ray Phoenix and Berto, as he's being called. If I missed that memo, I apologize. But I think that was the first time I've heard him called just straight up Berto. But regardless, continuing to build up Phoenix here. I think most would have assumed that was going to be the case. However, I feel like Berto did show himself out to be a pretty strong competitor in his own right. Unfortunately, Santos obviously not happy with the result. He comes out, basically ask Berto to shake Phoenix's hand. He does not. He leaves in frustration. But then we see Santos kind of congratulating Phoenix. So maybe some inner workings there. And then later on, we see Andrade kind of in the back, kind of go up to him and try to lift his spirits up. While I don't love grouping together the Hispanic talent because it seems like they do it a lot, I do want to see Andrade involved, and I think maybe potentially setting that up. Maybe Escobar is looking for some new talent for his little faction they have going on. So yeah, interesting to see where they'll take that. But obviously, Phoenix is I don't know. Maybe Phoenix is a little too big to be under Escobar. So curious to see where that goes. But definitely planting some seeds there. But yeah, a good couple matches to start off the show. A lot of promos in the SmackDown, but overall, but especially here during the first parts. KP, what were your thoughts on the couple of promos we have here and the Gauntlet and the Ray Phoenix match number 2?
I don't really have too much to say that you haven't already said about the opening segment. Obviously, LA Knight and Randy Orton, Nick Aldis, Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga. But I think just getting a little bit of clarity as to where Randy Orton's going into WrestleMania, I think, was ultimately the biggest part of this, I would say. The tag match, yeah, sure, that'll happen later on in the night, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But my initial take here is that we're going to be having Randy Orton against Solo Sikoa at WrestleMania, which is definitely a downgrade from Kevin Owens. But I suppose when someone gets injured last minute, you do have to sort of just piece things together and sort of figure things out as to what you're going to do when you've got limited time to figure things out. So yeah, I mean, Solo, I guess, is one of the bigger names on SmackDown that doesn't have a match at the moment. So I guess I can see where they're going with this. But yeah, I when your hands are tied, we haven't got a lot of time to do something. You just got to whip something out, and I guess this is probably the next best thing they've got, I suppose, really, based on what limited things they have available. A little bit of a negative here now for me. The Gauntlet match, I really didn't enjoy it at all. I think this is like just one of the worst Gauntlet matches I've ever seen. It didn't strike for me whatsoever. You had a makeshift tag team. Yeah, sure, Bayley and Lyra Valkyria are very good individually. We know that. They're top quality. And no disrespect to either of them. But you've got 5 tag teams who, are known at the moment for being together as a tag team. Whether they're good or not, yeah, obviously you can argue perhaps they're not the greatest of quality. But I just think when you basically lay out the entire women's tag team division and then you put 2 women together just because why not? And then they just go through each and every single one of those teams. It doesn't do the division any favors. As far as Liv and Raquel are concerned, their number contenders are 2 women who've just been thrown together for why not reasons. Whereas Lyra could be defending her Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania, but that's not happening. You've got the rest of the division that ultimately could step up. I think Alba Fire and Piper Niven, there's no reason why they couldn't be propelled into a position where they could take on Liv and Raquel. Yeah, sure, the dynamic is heel against heel, and obviously you look at it like that, you think maybe that wouldn't work out too well, but I think sometimes you can excuse that based on your limited resources. I don't know. It's just the way that Lyra and Bayley basically buried most of the division, and then had a slightly decent match against Piper and Alba. I enjoyed that last encounter. Don't get me wrong. I thought when those 4 were in the ring, it was a lot more fun. It was actually worth watching, and it was quite interesting. Back and forth, and it actually looked like Lyra and Bayley were being threatened. But this is when they were 5 teams deep. So I guess you can say what you will. Maybe a fresh Bayley and Lyra would end this one a lot quicker. So yeah, I don't know. I just didn't think it did anyone any favors. The match itself at WrestleMania, yeah, sure, we all saw this one coming when the match was announced, but I don't know. Nah, not keen, not a fan. Didn't like any of it, to be honest with you. Except for that last little bit between the four of them, and that even still that made them look weak to me. But yeah, anyway, I'll move on from that one because I think I don't want to drown uh, the levels of this. Going on to Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest, I think this was good because it allowed Drew to basically just get a step up above Damian Priest. You had that sort of eye patch dynamic, whether he's going to be 100% going into WrestleMania. He cleared that up during the segment, said that he's 100% cleared and Damian is 100% screwed. I quite liked that that sentence that he said. Thought that really worked for him. And then the malicious sort of intent afterwards, using the steel steps against Damian Priest, and then ultimately just hitting a future shock and just laying him out. The face on Damian Priest was quite funny in the end. He was completely struck by McIntyre's actions. And I just think this is the kind of Drew that I want to see. I want to see the one that's like, dominating his opponent. Obviously, going into WrestleMania, we still got a week to go. Damian Priest will have some comeback next week. I'm absolutely sure of that. But then we go into that Sin City Street fight, and I think both men bringing their intensity and raising their A games going into that one makes it for a much more compelling contest, considering I haven't really been looking forward to this. But this was a nice step in the right direction. Just raise that intensity, keep it going to that next level, and bring that energy into WrestleMania. And it should be a much better match than I think it's going to be. And the Street Fight stipulation helps too. So, yeah, okay, they're doing their best with it. Going into the Rey Fenix match against Berto. Wow, what a contest. Was taken away by this one for both men, really. I thought they absolutely killed it together. Berto, we don't really see much of Berto and Garza, or Angel, sorry. Berto and Angel in a singles capacity nowadays. We see them sometimes together as a tag team on TV. That isn't all the time, but they seem pretty consistent when they're as a tag team. But yeah, this took me by surprise. I really didn't see a top performance like this coming from Berto, and yeah, I thought he did extremely well. Rey Fenix, obviously, they're trying to sort of give him the introduction that they gave Penta over on Monday Night Raw, and the absolute stardom that he's sort of like achieved so far. Everyone seems to love Penta, and I absolutely understand why. And it looks like they're going to go down the same route with Rey Fenix, and I'm all for that. He's a star. He's great, very athletic, agile, off the ropes. He's fantastic, and just he's got a bit of charisma to him as well, which is nice. So it's almost like an all-around package there for Rey Fenix, and yeah, I think this match definitely may have stole the show for the entire night. So yeah, definitely a really good match. Took me by surprise, and very, very much enjoyed it. Rey getting the win is obviously no surprise. And then the little interactions afterwards with Santos Escobar, with Andrade, like you mentioned, backstage. Yeah, I think it's all very interesting. But like you said, it's all the Hispanic stuff together, isn't it? They do this quite a lot with the LWO on Raw, and obviously with these guys here on SmackDown. It seems very much just easy fit to have these guys working together, and maybe that's just genuinely the best way of doing it. I don't know. I don't understand how it all works. With the backstage politics and whatnot. Maybe that just is the easiest way to introduce these guys in. I don't know. Yeah, it might help with chemistry reasons, but nah, Rey Fenix looks great. Berto looks great. What a match. And yeah, very much enjoyed it.
You make a good point on the tag match simply because, the fact that Lyra and Bayley were, fighting for the IC title on Monday, and it looked like Bayley wasn't even going to congratulate Lyra on retaining the title. I'm going to counter you just a little bit, though, because some of the teams they were facing, Michin and BFAB, and Maxine and Natalia, even though I do believe they've been training together off scene. But some of those are kind of makeshift too. So I feel like, yes, you make a good point in that they're not doing the women's tag division any favors, but I feel like there's not much more you could do to that division. Obviously, it's not booked very strong right now in the first place, with the exception of Liv and Raquel and Piper and Alpha Fire. But so that's the only counter I'll make. I actually thought that Alba Fire and Piper were going to win, and that's the matchup they were going to go with. Maybe some scuffling between Bayley and Lyra, and then that would have been their match for Mania. That's the direction where I actually thought they were going. But obviously that wasn't the case. I think that would have made more sense. Everyone gets booked that way a little better. Whereas now, Chelsea Green's team that's been killing it with the Secret Service and all that, that seemed to make sense. Booking them against Liv and Raquel, and then everyone else is booked. But regardless, this is the path they've chosen, and we've harped on that before. And for whatever reason, they don't want Lyra defending. And it appears maybe we don't get Chelsea defending either. We don't know 100% for sure yet, but yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, the Drew and Damien, you made a good point. Yeah, the street fight or some sort of gimmick was absolutely needed, and I think they'll just create pure carnage, and that'll end up being a good contest as long as Drew wins. So I'm okay with that. Moving on. We have continuing on head scratching segments. Kind of got ahead of myself there a bit ago with Chelsea Green comment, but Zelina Vega and Chelsea Green, Piper and Alba Fire are backstage receiving medical attention due to having just lost their match. So Chelsea's forced to go out by herself. I'm still not 100% sure if this was the planned outcome or if this was some audible called on the spot. I don't know. In the grand scheme of things, it seems like it'll work out because it continues the feud. But even Zelina seemed like she was kind of confused here. Anyway, she gets the win due to a count out because Chelsea's outside of the ring. Yeah, this was strange. And then they announced a 6-woman tag match next week. And so I don't know. If anything, I thought maybe Zelina would have got a U.S. title shot, even though it was a terrible finish. Maybe she would get a title shot out of that either on Friday or maybe Mania, God forbid, I guess. I don't know. I was curious to see what you made of that one. But go ahead and move on. Cody Rhodes has a slew of former belt holders, titles on stage, and basically says how each person brought something special to this title and this title and this title. And then of course he gets to John Cena, who held down the company for better or worse for 10 plus years. Yeah, I thought this was good. This was a good promo. I think Cody can cut a good promo, and I enjoy his promos, each of them for what they are. This was something a little different. He didn't ask the crowd what they wanted to talk about and that sort of thing. So it was something a little different. I think Cody's doing his best that he can, his best of a lot of people could do, just by himself yet again, because John's obviously not there. So yeah, I'll let you add anything else you want to that one, KP. But yeah, I feel like this was good. Just a good segment, something a little different. And continuing the theme of head scratching moments, Roxanne is back on main roster. There's a small segment earlier where Roxanne is trying to get to Nick Aldis and basically says, I couldn't get to Ava NXT, so I came over here and kind of took matters into my own hands. So interesting. She was on main for a while in terms of PLEs. Then she went back to NXT, and now she's back on main, and I'm assuming we'll see her back on NXT. And what has to be one of the strangest, technically, debuts that I've seen in a while. At this point, why not just hold her off till after Mania? But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if she's on main or NXT right now. I have no clue. But yeah, interesting. But the match itself ends up being a match with Tiffany Stratton. I felt like was really good. Both women looked pretty good here, and Tiffany Stratton gets the win, which I don't think is a huge deal. Obviously, she's a champion right now, and so I don't think Roxanne getting pinned by her is an issue. But I will say, with Charlotte's interference right after the match, pulling Tiffany out basically right after she got the pin. And I'm going to sound like a hypocrite here because I complain about this all the time. But why not have Charlotte pull Tiffany out, keep Roxy booked strong here, continuing her main roster whenever she appears on it, why not keep her strong for there? And then you further the storyline between you further the rivalry though between Charlotte and Tiffany Stratton there, and everyone looks strong still. So again, I know I come off as a bit of a hypocrite because I complain about that a lot, but I feel like that was an easy fix there to keep everyone safe. But again, another conversation for another day, I suppose. Roxy could probably get her own video at this point, discussing what a up and down, well, not up and down, more of a just confusion around her main roster debut or lack thereof. And then we get to the main event, as discussed earlier, LA Knight and Randy Orton versus Tonga Toa and Solo Sikoa. No surprise here, LA Knight ends up getting the win with the BFT on Tonga, while Orton and Solo are outside the ring. Celebrations are cut short as Jacob Fatu takes out LA Knight and stands tall to end the show with the U.S. title in his hands. Yeah, fun enough main event for what it was. Obviously, the main takeaways there being that, as you mentioned earlier, Solo looking like Randy Orton and them are probably headed somewhere. Hasn't officially been announced yet, and night 1 has 7 matches, and I believe night 2 has 6, so possibly 1 slot there. We'll see what else they announce this week, but LA Knight and I think is in a lot of trouble. I think Jacob Fatu is ready for that title, so we'll see how that one goes. KP, curious to hear your thoughts on some of the matches and segments here. In particular, the Chelsea Green and Zelina Vega booking, and then Roxy's back and forth. And Cody Rhodes, what do you think of his promo?
Okay, so Chelsea Green and Zelina Vega. It was a head scratcher. I think that's something we can both agree on there. Yeah, I didn't really see what the point in that was. You had the match just going along pretty standardly, and then suddenly it's over. I think actually when I was watching it, I think I might have just looked away for a second, and then it was just over. I was like, wait, what happened then? So I had to rewind it and then just double check what had gone on. I didn't expect it. It sort of came out of nowhere. I just didn't expect a really random count out. But yeah, I don't know whether this was planned or not. You can believe what you want online, whether you hear this or whatever. But I mean, it just seemed a bit strange. Like I don't know. Could this have been a plan? Maybe. I kind of think maybe it wasn't, but who knows, right? Either way, though, Zelina Vega, she's still somehow in and around this championship picture, even though a couple of losses recently have gone against her. But she's still around, and she still wants to take it to Chelsea Green. I guess a win via countout is a win, regardless. So. She's still in the conversation, still in the picture. There's a tag team match that's been announced for next week, 3 versus 3. Obviously, Secret Service as well as Chelsea Green taking on Zelina, Katana, and Kaden. So yeah, there's that to come next time. Maybe Zelina will get a proper win then. We will see. But yeah, for now, this was odd. This is strange. I didn't see it coming. It took me by complete surprise, and it's a bit of a head scratcher for sure. I have no idea whether this is planned or not, but we will have to just go and I guess never find out, I suppose, right? Cody's promo was pretty good. I don't really say that too often about Cody Rhodes, but I think John Cena is bringing out the best in Cody and everything that's going on in this feud. So obviously, with the recent interaction between the two in London, you had one of the greatest promo one-to-ones back and forths that we've ever seen. And I think, a lot of that sort of like stayed in Cody's mind going into this particular promo with all these wonderful championship belts in attendance. And, Cody would go on to say basically how there was a point where he mentioned about Cena calling him out for his tattoo and basically saying how he's, fine with being just a common fan. Well, Cody would bring up the fact that he's not just fighting for himself here in the WWE, he's fighting for the next 20 WWE champions to come. And that is literally what this is all about, because you've got such a history between all of the WWE champions in the past. John Cena wants to be the last WWE champion before he ruins wrestling, as he said. And this just feels a lot larger than life than what maybe it was towards the start. It feels much bigger in terms of the importance of holding the gold. Cody saying that he wants to keep it home. He wants to, keep it safe at home, whatever. And John Cena ultimately wants to take it away with him after he retires. So this is it's becoming big. And obviously, with all these titles around here, and Cody would go around and basically mention and name drop the other champions. Yeah, it resonated with me. Like I say, I don't normally, enjoy Cody segments on the mic, but this one was really, really good. It highlighted the importance, the significance of the match, and the reputation of everything that goes into it. It was, it just made to be seemed, illustrious, and that's exactly what they did. So yeah, kudos to Cody Rhodes. Great segment here. Enjoyed it, and adds a little bit more excitement to that already very interesting WrestleMania match. And then going back to a head scratcher, Roxanne Perez. You can't keep tabs on her, can you? One moment she's on main roster, one moment she's on NXT for a while, then she's back on the main suddenly. Here she is again, this time on SmackDown, and she's taking a loss to Tiffany Stratton. I don't know. I don't know about this. This is a weird one because Roxy doesn't have anything planned for next weekend. Stand and Deliver, WrestleMania, none of them. Neither. So as to what she's going to be doing, I have no idea. Probably just taking a seat and just watching on from the crowd or the stands, whatever, in the back. I guess that's her role this year because, yeah, I don't know. It's just a strange situation. You got one of the hottest prospects. Literally, she's called the Prodigy for a reason, and she's not involved on either thing. But the match itself was fine. It did the job for Tiff. She needed a win going into her match against Charlotte at Mania, and ultimately that's what she got here at the expense of Roxanne Perez. So I'm not going to really sort of dwell too much on that. But talking about Tiffany and Charlotte here, it's just what you'd expect from the week before WrestleMania. Tiffany goes in, gets a win. Charlotte attacks her at the end. After apparently having been sent home earlier in the night because of an altercation in the parking lot earlier on. It's the classic, isn't it? You think your opponent's not there. Oh no, they're there. You're laid out, and they're standing tall above you, 1 week away from your WrestleMania match. So it's another chance for Charlotte Flair to stand on top at the end. We've spoken about the sort of the balance here of this feud in the last few weeks. And probably the last month or so, really, if you think about it, 4 or 5 weeks going into WrestleMania, it's been mostly Charlotte Flair, and this is another chance of that. Next week will be quite interesting to see who gets the last laugh. We've got one more week, but I think great for Tiff in terms of winning the match, get some momentum, and then being laid out by Charlotte. Great for Charlotte. Not good for Roxy, whatever way you look at it here. I do agree with you. I think maybe they could have had Charlotte just cost Tiff the match. That would have been quite good, and then maybe Tiff gets the last laugh next week. But either way, this is what it is. And then going into the main event, Solo and Tama Tonga, Randy and LA Knight. I think this is what just needed to happen with the current landscape between these guys. Solo, obviously the chosen man, by the looks of it, here to go against Randy at Mania, and LA Knight building towards his match with Jacob Fatu at WrestleMania for the United States Championship. It was good enough. It was fine. It was it was pretty much how you'd expect it. Randy and LA Knight, Randy and Solo Sikoa just going off into the crowd, leaving LA and Tama for the finish, and then Fatu attacks at the end. Yeah, it was good. It's good. It's what you wanted from Fatu. Basically, just blindsiding the champion when he kind of least expects it, and the brutality that Jacob Fatu unleashes each and every single week. It's no different depending on who. It's no different based on who he's targeting. Whether it's Braun Strowman, whether it's LA Knight, whether it's anybody else, it's the same thing. And that's just what he's about. He's a savage. He's a werewolf. He literally just mauls people for the fun of it. And that was just another good way of bringing himself into that that elevated position here going into WrestleMania. So LA Knight's got his work cut out for him. Could be a tough night for LA. But we still got one more week. Let's see what brings us here to the Showcase of the Immortals. And yeah, this SmackDown was a weird one. It had its ups, it had its downs. The downs are a bit of a head scratcher. I'd probably give it a 6.5 out of 10. I think the negatives outweighed the positives here for me personally, but the promo from Cody was a highlight, as well as Berto against Rey Fenix. I think they're probably my two standout moments of the night. What about you, Nick? What did you think of the show as a whole? What were your standouts?
Believe it or not, we had the same number, 6.5 on mine as well. Just felt like a pretty bang average show for being the penultimate match before Mania. Penultimate SmackDown before Mania. I don't know. I don't want to come off as a broken record, but such is the case with a lot of these feuds and their builds and or lack thereof. To put it mildly, this year has been a really strange build. I think the extended time they were allotted just kind of threw everything off. I feel like they really struggled with pacing in a lot of these feuds, and yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. Like the card itself for Mania still looks great. I think I will have no issues. I think Mania will be good as it should be. I just some of these feuds they really could have done a much better job and or you know matches that could have potentially been on there. And again, maybe I'm just expecting too much. I'm just wanting too many matches. But another head scratcher for me was like the Street Profits and their championship match uh, next week. That's on SmackDown, and I feel like what they're trying to do is just make it like WrestleMania weekend. I feel like they've been doing that for a few years now, but there's no reason why that match shouldn't be on a Saturday or Sunday. We have two nights now. We have two nights. The women's U.S. title isn't on there. The women's intercontinental title match isn't on there. The SmackDown title is getting pushed to Friday, and that division has been absolutely killing it. So what do you do to give them incentive to keep up the pace? You're putting the match on Friday. Granted, something screwy could happen, and they could still make that match, I suppose. So I'm not going to go too much into depth on that. But and then meanwhile we have the El Grande Americano and Rey Mysterio match instead of those title matches. So I don't know. I'm not feeling super high right now on some of these booking decisions that are being made. But again, I won't go too far into that. We'll just wait and see what next week brings. Maybe they'll fix some of these wrongs. But definitely some head scratchers, and it feels like we're both kind of on the same page. And it feels like a lot of those head scratching decisions seem to be around the women's division right now. So a bit of a bummer, but we'll see what they can write over this next week. So yeah, unfortunately, just a bit of a negative. I just felt like they probably should have maybe not done some of these decisions. I guess some head scratching booking, I guess, to say the least. Not to come off repetitive, but with that, we will see what the next week brings, and we will be back for quite a few things next week. We have obviously the Raw NXT SmackDown recap, but then we will also have predictions videos for Mania Night 1, Mania Night 2, and Stand and Deliver, of course. So yeah, we'll try to turn this around and see if we can get back on the right track on the last week and see what else they can do on officially Mania week now officially. So yeah, we'll see what they can bring. And until next time, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. We'll see you soon. Take care.